Oh, I put my ears in.
Hi, it's Everett, Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom, and also welcome to my brand new studio. I'm broadcasting from Chesapeake, Virginia, and I'm on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitch, and I'm broadcasting around the world. So if you're signed in for the first time today, welcome aboard, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It helps my rating. Also, give me some comments and give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. I'm in my studio today with my wife, Gloria.
Hello.
And she'll be monitoring the broadcast, and I'll get the chat room on. Going over to turn the chat room on. Okay, chat room's live, so you can make comments and give me some questions if you have them, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Now today, I'm going to talk about shadows. And in art, there are two types of shadows. There's a form shadow, and there's the cast shadow. The form shadow is when the light source hits an object and it forms a shadow behind the object on the opposite side of the sun or the light source. And it shows the form, it shows the depth of the object, which is very important. And then the object itself is blocking the source of light, and it will cast a shadow on something else. So a cast shadow is from the source that has the form shadow. So we're going to go over both of those today. A little bit of confusing sometimes, and also how to paint those, and also what colors to use for the shadows. So we'll go over all that today in my demonstration. So this will be a demonstration, and it'll be a small painting to look at. And But let's see, before we go there, let me take to my website. There's my home page on my website. And up there is a navigation bar at the top left corner of my website, everettswatercolors.com. And you can see, you can look at the live classroom. It'll be on there after the broadcast today. And all my previous classrooms are on there. All my live shows are on that particular link. And then I'll be on later on this afternoon at 7:30 with Simply Drawing with Everett. I'll have another program at 7:30 this evening. And then the Fun with Watercolors is where I have the, and I'll show you before. I'll show the photograph and also the drawing, which will be there for you to download and paint along with me. Okay, so I'm broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitch. So let's go back to my main camera. So let me go over to now my painting table and let me introduce my material. So this is my subject matter today. I was out last weekend looking for a good subject to show, and this one really does a good job. You can see the trees themselves have the form shadow, and then the cast shadow is the source of light's over here, off to the right, and the cast shadow is falling on the ground, okay, and the shadow from trees. Well, I took this first shot. This will give you a kind of an overview of what I did, but I went in a little bit closer to this area, more interesting in this section right in here. So I took another photograph, which brought me into this this building here. And there's a cast shadow, which also has a cast shadow on the building itself. So I thought that was very interesting. And then down here at the bottom, really interesting, how the cast shadow is happening down here. So I took another photograph, and you can see here how the cast shadow comes and hits some of the surfaces and then bounces around and goes on up. So we're going to paint it that way today. I'll show you how I do that. And this cast shadow here is from the curb here on the parking lot area. This is the cast shadow. So I got lots here to show you and lots here to practice on. So let me take that aside here. Now what I did a quick sketch drawing, and I plotted out the cast shadows here on this particular sketch. You can see here the cast shadow from the tree and the cast shadow and up here on this building right here, which is one I'm going to be the main building I'll be talking about today. So I did a drawing from this particular scene here. I did a drawing. This is my design drawing, which is what I'm going to paint on. But this is a sketch. So the sketch and this photograph will be in Fun with Watercolors on my webpage. You can download those and use those to do a painting on your own. Okay, drop it down there. Okay, then I've transferred the drawing to my painting board. Material today, I'm going to be using the flat brush from Holbein, the 3/4 inch flat brush, 1/2 inch flat brush, and the number 6 round. These are all Holbein. These are all synthetic brushes. They're also on my website, everettswatercolors.com. And I'll also be using silver brush, the small hake brush today to wet the paper to help with the spreading the paint along. So this is the hake brush. Okay. And the paint, I have a very limited palette today. I'll be using Cerulean Blue, a little bit of Alizarin Crimson. I got yellow ochre down here at the bottom, burnt Sienna, and a green number 1, probably also Hooker's green over here on the bottom. And then I'll use a little bit of Payne's gray. And I'll talk about those colors when I get in there. Let me show you my close-up camera. I'm also going to be using the watercolor pencils. Now this watercolor pencil happens to be a general pencil product, and it's called the Waverly watercolor pencils, and they're very good. They're very nice. This is a set of 24. Which, if I was going to buy a set of watercolor pencils, I would recommend getting at least a 24 set. This has a nice spread out. Okay, so this is the package that comes in, the 24 set, and then I have it over here in my my portable manual, which I take on plein air with me all the time. So it's my drawing packet that I take with me on location. Now the real nice thing about the colored pencil is I can take the colored pencil, and this happens to be a green number. This happens to be a green color, and I'll use the side of the pencil. Just like I would when I do any kind of shading. I use the side of the pencil, So I put a little bit of color where I want it. This is the color pencil. And then let's say I want to use a little bit of brown. Okay, and then all I do is take a brush with a little bit of water in it, and I add that water to it. You can see right away it come. Oh, you know, I'm using it over here. I'm using the pencil, and I'm not even showing you where I hit it. Okay, I'm sorry about that. And then you just add a little bit of water to it, and it just comes alive. Okay, it just comes alive. So I'll be using the color pencil to kind of augment some of the colors on the painting today. Okay, just a quick demonstration. All right, let's go back to the overhead. Okay, what I'm going to concentrate on today is there's a lot of areas here that's really background work before I get to the trees and the buildings and so forth. So I'm going to start out by putting the light colors in first. So I'm going to start out by I'm going to paint this first building that I like, the one on the star of the show here, and I'm going to use a little bit of light blue here. And I'm going to go ahead and paint in I'm going to start out with light colors. This is Holbein Artist Watercolors. And these are very colorful. They come to a nice, colorful and bright color. Their watercolors are outstanding. They have 108 colors in their inventory. I have 108 colors on my website. I have them all available on my website, and I use quite a few of them. I don't use them all, but once in a while I try to use a different color. So I'll take my time. This is kind of the main building here that I want to have today, so I'm kind of taking my time on this one, just to make sure it's covered properly. So I'll start with a light blue. Cerulean Blue is a nice light blue. I use it for the skies also, but I'll use it for this building here in the meantime. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of, just a slight bit of green number 1. I always like to put a little bit of color in with the colors I use. So I'm taking a little extra time on this building here. It'll be the main interest of the painting exercise. This is a little exercise, but to get this in properly. Okay, and then it's also the front side of it's also blue, even though it's in shadow. The front side's also blue. Okay. All right, now this building over here on the left is I'm going to make it a red building. And what I'm going to use Alizarin Crimson, and I got blue in my brush. So if I mix the blue with the red, I'm going to get purple. But I want to make a real light blue, a real light red, a lot lighter than that. And what I'm going to do before I start, though, I'm going to go ahead and wet the area over here because it'll make the paint go a little faster. So I'll re-wet the area here with the Hake brush with just water, and that'll get the paint flowing real fast. And then I'll pick up the Alizarin Crimson, and I'll make it a light blue. Excuse me, a light red. Alizarin Crimson is a beautiful color, and I use it in a lot of my paintings. So this area I'm painting right now. This is kind of the sun's hitting this part of the building, so it's going to be a lighter value. of the this is the front side of this particular building. A little shed. These are all lined up on the edge of the parking lot, so they're just a great opportunity here to capture an interesting shape and to get the shadow pattern. Okay, now this one, I'm going to use a smaller brush now because I'm getting a little bit further down the road here. So this one down here is a real smaller building. So I'm going to put that. I'm going to use yellow ochre, very light value of yellow ochre. So I'll use yellow ochre down here on this building. So I make all these buildings different colors, and they're all different colors. Some light browns and some blues and reds. These are the sheds here located in this parking lot where I found this scene. I always find a scene that's kind of out of the way. There isn't any traffic involved in me, so I have a pretty good freedom of getting what I want. Okay, now, so the sun is coming. The sun is coming from this drive, so the area here is be the lighter side, be the lighter area. Okay, all right. Now let's just start working on the ground. I got to get the ground going. Also, what I can do here. All right, let me finish my my plan here. All right, so I'm going to start here. Now the ground here has got the streets here behind the trees. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. So I'm going to go ahead with the I'm going to wet the paper first with the Hake. Put the wrong one. Wet the paper. Now, by wetting the paper, I get the paint to flow a lot faster and a lot smoother, and get it down. Okay, so I wet that, and I'm going to pick up. This will be a gray. It's the asphalt part of the road, so it'll be a gray color. So I'm using a little bit of Payne's gray over here. A bit of Payne's gray, and as it comes down. Well, I'm going to get a little bit darker down here. As I come forward, it's going to be a little bit darker. And I got a little bit of a Alizarin Crimson in my brush. But that's okay. It gives me a different color. That's fine. I like to have a variety of color. Reflections from the building over here, etc., etc. And what I'll do is I'll put a little more color on that. It's too dark. When it dries, it'll be lighter. I'm picking a lot up now with the tissue. Let that dry. Let me get to the next section over here. So this is just painting the background colors. These is not very important at this stage. It's just the background colors that I have in the particular scene. These is the black top. Which is a light gray. And I go further back into the background, or back toward the background, it gets lighter. And there was at the ending here, there was a background road back here, street, roadway. I'll go ahead and put that in. Very light gray. So I'm just kind of blocking in these colors. This one here really got dark on me. Okay, we'll leave it alone. It says a shadow of something coming in. All right. Now the next color I want to put in is the little grass area. So I'm going to go ahead and wet that up a little bit. So we'll put a little bit of water on this one to wet the ground. Okay. And then what I want to pick up now, I want to pick up some green for the grass. A little bit of green. It's a little grassy area. It's got a lot of, also got some dirt in there, so we'll mix that a little bit of brown maybe in there. So we'll start with light green, mixing a little bit of yellow in that, get a little bit lighter. Okay, so it starts out a light green back here because it's grass. I might leave some white paper showing also, just to give a little variety. Leave a little bit of white paper showing. So this is the grass on the ground. And then I'll pick up a little bit of brown. I'll pick up a little bit of burnt sienna, and it's there's a little bit of dirt section here on this grass. Just give a little indication of a little bit of dirt showing. That'll dry also. And let me see, I still got the green. The only important thing I'm trying to make sure is I got the edges nice and clean to separate the sections. So this is a little grass section. It's not the most important part of today's demonstration, but it's just to give us some background. I'm going to put some more brown in here, just a little bit, a little dirt. So scrubbing in a little bit of brown, a little bit of burnt sienna. Okay. Now the next section is a sidewalk, and it's kind of like a yellow ochre. So I'll mix up a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of brown and a little bit of burnt sienna with it. So it's got kind of a light brown color to it. So it'll be very light. Put a lot of water in that mixture. So I'll go ahead and wet this area. Get this strip done. Okay. And I'll go ahead and put in the light brown. This is a light brown mix. This is like a sidewalk. Maybe just a touch of Payne's gray, and have to change it just a little bit of Payne's gray mixed in with the brown. Kind of gray it down a little bit. Just gray. I want a gray, a brownish gray. So I took the burnt sienna and mixed just a touch of Payne's gray in with it. Okay. And as I come forward, I'll add a little more burnt sienna to get a little bit darker here as I come forward on the color. Because as you come forward in a paint or in a scene, the color is a little bit stronger as you come forward, a little bit lighter as you go back in the distance. So that gives you a little perception, a little perspective as far as value and color. Color gets a little bit paler as it moves back into the distance. I want this foreground area to be a little bit darker here, a little bit darker color. And gray it down a little bit with Payne's gray. I grade down a lot of my colors with Payne's gray. It just knocks the color down a little bit. Okay. All right. So we got this road. We got the roadway or street. We got the grass a little bit with green, and we got the sidewalk. Now we'll paint the. This is really also asphalt here on the parking lot, so I can go ahead and use the Payne's gray here also. So what I'll do is let me wet it up. So I'm using the silver brush Hake, the Hake brush. So I'll go ahead and put a little bit of water on the parking lot surface. A little bit of water there. And it wets the paper. Okay, now I'm going to go take very carefully, because I want this to be nice and light. This is a light color. So this is the light gray of the parking lot. This is the asphalt, which is the same color as the street. So this will be down this whole section here. These are white bricks underneath this building, so I'll leave those alone. Don't want to paint those. I'll be very careful. This is the impact area here, so I'm being very careful here at this section. And I come down. Also trying to change the value just a little bit, be a little bit darker. Remember, the colors always get just a little bit stronger as you come forward. So I'm going to put a little bit more Payne's Gray in this gray mix to give the illusion of perspective, near and far. So we're almost finished with blocking in the major colors here, because we'll get right in. I want to get into the shadows as soon as I get this done here, which is the main part of the demonstration today, the shadows. But I have to set up the design here a little bit. So I've got the sidewalk. Then over here is the parking lot, or the parking area with the asphalt surface. Now, while we're here, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the green. There's some trees up here, slight trees up here, so I'm going to use a little bit of green number 1, which is a light green, and I'm going to use the Hake brush. I'm going to go ahead and put that color up in here for the trees, get them started. There'll be some darks up here, but it starts out with some lights also. So we'll get the light colors in there first. Okay, all right. Now I need to dry the painting a little bit, so get the paint dry before I get started. So let me turn the blow dryer on. Okay, so to set the stage here for the shadows, put in the background colors here for the roadway over here to the right. And then some of the areas of the parking area. This is the grass here, the green, a little bit of brown in it. Then I got the sidewalk, and the parking lot itself, the light gray, and then the building over here, the light building, the light yellow ochre one, and I got the blue, and I got the red Alizarin Crimson over here. So the 3 buildings. So I'll use it, dry it up a little bit here, get a nice start, make sure it's nice and dry. And then we can start putting in the shadow patterns, which is what I want to get to. this section over here, okay, it's going to dry a little bit lighter. Okay, before I go into the shadows, I want to add in some darks, so some dark areas, and let me go ahead and get started on that. So, and I can use a real dark green, so I'm going to use Hooker's green. I'm going to mix a little bit of Hooker's green in with Ultramarine Deep. Okay, and that's going to give me a real nice dark green. I'm going to come in here in the background. There's these real dark greens way in the back. So that'll set off this light area. And there's also some smaller trees here in the back, which I want to save too. I'm going to leave the white of the paper to show the trunks of the smaller trees here in the background. I'm working on the background now, putting a dark background to set off this light area. Did I get there? Did I hit it? I gotta watch my head getting in the camera mode here. Hey, also go around this little building here. Gives me a nice dark set behind this rooftop. So I'm using also, as I put the darks in here, I'm using taking advantage of dark against light wherever I can. So this little background area, which is dark, will help set off the light areas. That's always a good thing to do in a painting or in a setting or scene. Is to use as much as you can the light against darks. And this one down here, I'm going to put a little more greenery in here. I might have to change a smaller brush, just so I can get in between some of these sections down here. A little space down here. There's some background trees here, which will, makes it a little more interesting. It shows there is something in the background. Not just a big blob, but some detail. Shows that there's a road back there, a little bit of pathway, a roadway, some background trees. So this dark color now is setting off this light area in the background against this light area in the foreground, middle ground, and a little bit over here. Yeah. I'm using the 1/2" flat Holbein brush. Gives me a lot of control. I use edges to draw straight lines, and I can use the flat brush, the flat section to cover the area. And I use the tip of the brush over here to give me a little bit of edge control, showing the rough parts of the leaves of the trees and so forth. Okay. And up in here will be some parts of these trees that are going to have shadows inside the trees. So we'll put some color up here. I'm just putting a little bit of interest back here in the background. A little darker greens. Okay, let that dry for a little bit. And now I'm going to go ahead and put some more darks in. I've got the top rooftops of these buildings here, so I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of Payne's Gray. I'm going to put the dark rooftop over here. This would be tile, be a dark black tile on top of this building here. So this would be a dark against light also. I got the dark of the rooftop against the light of the building, which is another good thing. Take advantage of that. There's a little white trim around this building. I'm going to leave the white paper right now because it's a trim around the edge of the building. Most of these buildings have that edge of some kind in a different color. So I'll leave that as, again, interesting for that particular area. And this little building down here, again, there's light against dark. I'm going to put this dark color here now, which is the rooftop, on this little building. And it also is light against dark. I got the dark roof against the light building and the other light building. So it's going to get two. Using the edge of the brush gives me a nice straight edge, and the flat edge of the brush gives me another straight edge. So I got both working for me. All right. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to start putting in some color on the trees. What I'm going to do is take a mixture here of, well, first of all, I'll start with burnt sienna. A little bit of burnt sienna and yellow ochre. And I'm going to put in some color here for the trees. And I'm going to use the edge of the brush to give me a rough edge. And I might even leave a little bit of white paper showing on this far edge over here. The light's coming from this side, so the lightest section will be on the right side of the form. And as this is really this color here is really the local color of the tree, the local color, which is what the tree's base color is, the local color. And then as I go around, I'm going to pick up a darker mix. I've got a little bit of ultramarine blue mixed in with burnt sienna. And then that's going to be the back. It's going to be the dark edge. This is going to be the form shadow. This is going to be the edge of the tree that's away from the light, which is the form shadow of the tree. So every time we have light shining on an object, you're going to have the back side of that object is going to be in shadow. It's going to have the form of the, in this case here, it's a rounded form. So I'm going to start here with dark, and then middle, and then light, which will give me a rounded form shape. And a little rough edge where, you know, it's a tree, so it's going to have a little bit of texture here. Okay, now what I think I'll do now is take the flat brush with a little bit of water in it now, and run it down here so that that color now is going to, and the lighter color now is going to be on the right edge. I'm coming down next to the white edge of the...
Your head's in the way.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry about my head, excuse me, I'm painting standing up, so I always forget where the camera is. Okay. So I've got the dark edge here, which is in shadow, which is the form. As it comes around, it gets lighter, and on the right side is going to be where the sun's hitting the tree, so it's going to be the lightest edge over here. So that's the form shadow of that particular tree. I'll go back here and do another one. I'm going to start out with the base color, which is In this case, it's brown, which is I'm using burnt sienna. And I'm going to use the same, leave the same white edge, a little bit of white edge, not as much, but just a little white edge to show a little lighter area. Then I'm going to pick up a little bit of dark area, dark mix, which has got a little bit of ultramarine blue in it. This is the dark brown, and I'm going to. This is the form edge, which is opposite the light. The back side of this tree is going to be the form shadow, which is dark. And I'll get the roundness of the tree by blending those colors together without too many edges. I mean, some lines that are okay, that's the shape of the tree, that's fine. But try to keep it from forming too many straight lines. So here now I'm going to take just a brush with water in it, and now I'm just going to feather the front edge here, make the light edge right here at the front. It'll be lighter. Okay. So here's another form shadow, dark on this side and light on the other. And that last one back here, it doesn't not too much to see, so I can put almost all of it dark because it's pretty far back. So this third tree I have. So just indicating it's just indicating another tree. This is really the two trees here show the actual forms is what most important. Okay. Now the shadow on the ground, which is most interesting. I'm going to use the round brush because a little more control, a little smaller area. And as I go across here, I pick up the color that's on the ground. In this case here, I'm going to have to change this a little bit, but it's really a bit of mixture of brown and the green. So this is going to be the shadow color. Okay, this is the cast shadow from the tree. And as it gets closer, as you come up closer to the bottom of the tree, it gets a little bit darker at the bottom, at the base. I'm mixing a little bit of brown in that so that the brown and the green go together. But that's going to be the cast shadow. And I can take a little bit of this mixture here and kind of blend this together to form the shape of the tree. Here we go. Leave that go. Now, as we come across this brown, grayish brown sidewalk, we've got to change the color now. It was green brown here. Now it's going to be brown with a little bit of black in it, so that the cast shadow picks up the color of the actual surface with a little bit of coolness to it. So that's going to be, it's going to have a darker brown, but it's going to follow the shape across that surface. So it's a cast shadow on that particular surface, which is brown, a more brownish color. Now I'm going to leave this edge, I'm going to leave the edge of the sidewalk white. Just leave it white. I don't want to mess with that. But now I've got to work on the shadow, the edge of the sidewalk. There's a cast shadow from the edge of the sidewalk, so I need to put that in. And what I'm going to use there, I'm going to use a little bit of Payne's Gray because it's going to be gray. This is a gray. So I'm going to use gray here in the shadow. So I'm going to pick it up right here with a darker value. So this is the cast shadow from the edge of the sidewalk. And I left that edge white just to make it different. it's a lighter color, so rather than paint that in, rather than paint that in with a color, I'm just going to leave it white to specify that that's the edge of the sidewalk. But its cast shadow is going to be gray because the surface that it's casting the shadow on is gray, the gray asphalt. And it's going to be darker because of the cast shadow. It's away from the light. It's blocking the light, the source of light into that area. So it becomes a cast shadow. Okay, then I can run that color now right up here. And it's going to get a little bit lighter as we go away. Remember, colors get a little bit less intense as we move away. So I'm going to make this lighter as I go back into the distance. It's still going to be a gray, but it's going to be much less intense. Lighter and lighter and lighter. It's still going to be there, but it won't be as intense as it is here in the foreground. Keep that edge a little bit so we have the edge of the shadow, which is the edge of the sidewalk, casting a shadow. Okay. Okay, now the real interesting part that I liked was, let me get some of these bricks in first. I can make these bricks, they're white, so I can make them a little bit gray on the shadow side. Let's talk about the shadow side of the building. We got this building here now is turned. There's a front of it and there's a side, so I can put and this is blue, so I'm going to make it a darker blue. I'm going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue in here. So I'm going to make this dark blue because it's in shadow. So now we got now we have the form shadow of this building. We're working on form shadow now. This is the side that's turned away from the sun. So it's going to be darker. So this is the form shadow of this building. Remember, today we're working on form shadows and cast shadows. This is the form shadow. We did the form shadow of the tree. Now we're talking about the form shadow of the building. The side is turned away from the light. I'll turn it a little bit so I can get the edge a little bit better. A little more control. I'm using the 3/4 inch flat now because I have a bigger space to work on. And I use the edge of the brush. The flat brush gives me a nice sharp edge. And the corner gives me a nice control where I can go in and do actual detail on the corners, just like a round brush. I go right in there with a corner and give me a nice edge. Cover that space very nicely. Okay. Then I'll square away this corner here. So I'm using the edge of the brush now to give me that nice sharp straight mark that I want. Use the edge of the brush, the front edge of the brush. I'm going down, I turn it around, come on down to the bottom. Okay, that's in shadow. That's the shadow side of this building, which is the form shadow. Okay, now there's another form shadow back here. Let me change the sizes. This little yellow ochre one, I'm going to use a little bit of burnt sienna on that one. So the shadow side of this building now is going to be a darker value than the front side. The front side was a light brown or yellow ochre, so I'm going to use a darker brown, which is, say, burnt sienna here on the side. This will be the shadow side of this building. Okay, all right. Now, so there's two buildings now. Okay, I was talking about the bricks earlier. So I'm going to take a little bit of Payne's Gray, And I start out light, because you can always darken it. Start out light and put a little bit of color down here. Because these are in shadow. These bricks, the edge of this building here, and these bricks underneath, this is the shadow side of the bricks I'm painting on. So the white bricks, so I'm painting the shadow of the white. Which is a gray. I could put a little bit of blue in with that. White always has a color. A little bit of blue of the building, be a little, maybe a little reflection from the color blue. Okay. Then this one down here is interesting. This shadow on this brick here. There's a brick right here, right underneath the front of this building. There's a shadow. Remember, that's the form shadow of that brick. The light's coming this way, but it's not on this side. So there's also the brick. It's going to have a shadow underneath. This is the form shadow of this brick. So two sets of bricks over here on the end. Another form shadow. The light's hitting the front section, but on the side here, it's away from the light. So it's going to have a little shadow, form shadow. Okay. Now I'm going to leave this section white. I'm going to leave the trim white. We'll just leave it away. I'll just leave it white. That way I won't mess with it. These are white bricks. I'll leave those alone. The only other little, I guess a little key here is that on the top, the light is hitting this but this section on top is going to be not as dark as the side, but it's going to be a little bit. It's not in direct light, so it's going to have a little bit of off color white on that. So I'll make a real light color. It's darker here on the side, and you can always go back and make this a little stronger to indicate that this is the shadow side. And this side here. Okay. Now the most interesting part of this whole statement here is the shadows goes up this building. So let me start here with the gray on the ground. Okay, so this shadow now follows down, it goes across, and it comes across, let me see, what I want to show here is it comes across here. It's going to have a little bump to it because it's different rays, so it's going to come across this white edge, little edge to it. It's going to come down, and it's going to fall down on the other side. Because the tree is the tree is casting a shadow on the ground. So I got the tree shadow, it's skipping over and it's combining with the shadow of the sidewalk. But now it continues up the face of this one over here. So it's going to go straight up the side. This shadow is going to connect. And then there's the shadow the horizon, or this side will go like this. The horizontal shape of that brick will go like that. Now the most interesting part of this whole thing that happens is that there's a space in between here. So what's going to happen is this shadow is going to shift. The shadow actually follows this line right here. I go up in space, you go across, and it hits right here. That's how you paint that in. That's a real. You have to really have a good picture of this. That's why I took that photograph. But also, when you draw that in. So what I did was, this front edge here, the front edge of this brick goes straight up, and that's how I pick up where it picks up here on the building. Then it goes vertical. So this is a real good demonstration of a cast shadow of what happens, and this happens everywhere. Even if you've set up a still life in your house or anywhere, you're going to put a light against something. You're going to have a cast shadow, and that cast shadow will do all kinds of angles depending on where it hits. Okay. Now I made that a little bit extra darker because I wanted to show it off and say that's the way. No, just leave it a little bit darker than it was, just to show it off. Now now let me just, there's a little bit of cleanup here now, and we're coming to the end. There's a dark window here in this, because there's glass. There's a glass window with no. It's dark inside, so it's to be dark. There's no light going through this, so it's all in shadow inside. I'm gonna leave the edges white as the border. And you'll notice the perspective lines they all point in a direction down here. And this goes down this way because it's above the horizon, or viewpoint. And the photograph also shows it that this goes this way. That gives you perspective of the building. And this will come up here to the top. Now I can show a little bit of this. The branch here could be coming across the front of this building. I'll leave that alone. Okay. And the other thing I want to point out is a little bit of blue sky up there. So I'm going to go ahead and put some blue sky in right above the top of the building. Going to mix up a little blue here. Ultramarine, excuse me. There we go. Cerulean Blue, and that'll be my sky color. I'll put that right across here. That fills in that blank there. It covers that white area up. Put a little bit of blue sky across there. So the sun was out that morning. This was last weekend, and it was shining bright. I had to wait for the sun to come up, or really get a good shadow pattern going before I took pictures and so forth. But I'd already done some drawings and done some sketches of this area already, so very familiar with the pattern and the colors. Okay, and there's a little patch of blue down here. I'll put that down here, inside the tree here. A little bit of sky color coming through. Okay. All right, let me see. I've got everything I wanted to show. Oh, yeah, one last thing. This foreground tree, which is really not that important, but just to finish it off, get a dark brown. There's a dark brown here. It'll come down. This foreground tree. There's a mound of dirt around the base of the tree. And then it turned into green after that. So there's a cast shadow down here at the bottom, just like everywhere else. And then there was a cast shadow across the, just a touch across the bottom here, just to kind of finish off the painting a little bit. And this, the bottom of the tree comes down here. Okay. All right. So we have the the form shadow on the trees, which shows the light source over here hitting this side, and then the tree turns from a light to middle to dark value because of the roundness of the tree. So the form shadow is on the back side, away from the light. This shadow pattern over here, though, is more interesting. This was the same kind of tree with the same form shadow, and then the cast shadow on the ground was cast because this tree is blocking the sunlight on the ground, so it casts a shadow. The shadow follows the shape of the tree. It picks up the color. What's on it is green, so the shadow is going to have a greenish cast to it, a little bit of blue or brown in it. And then it picks up the sidewalk, which is brown, with a little bit of gray in it. And it bumps over the white strip, which is the curb, the edge of the curb, and then it drops down into the cast shadow of the curb. The curb goes along here. The cast shadow on the blacktop in the parking lot. And then it goes up here up at white brick, which has a cast shadow and a form shadow. Then it goes up and hits the front side of the building and disappears. Okay. Now the last thing I want to put in is another cast shadow. Looking for my rigger brush. My rigger. I guess I have to use another rigger. Here's the rigger. Okay. Can anyone figure out what am I leading to? What cast shadow is still there? All right. I'm going to mix up the blue, so that should give you a clue. Because there's a cast shadow from this tree, from the branches. So I'm going to have to put up some, I'm going to put some color in here that's going to allude to that. So this would not be blue up here, it would be more of a gray. This color down here is going to have a little gray into it with blue, so it's going to come down. So the tree up here, this tree coming across here is going to cast a shadow on this building front also. So I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to leave some areas open because of the tree limbs and the tree branches. And this would come right on down a little over halfway. Again, this depends on maybe a photograph you've taken or a reference. But this is what cast shadows do to an object. It'll cast a different color, make it a different color. It'll change the color of the object. It'll put a shadow, put a shape on it, and it changes the whole outlook of what's happening on the actual scene. So here I'm actually covering up a lot, which is what happened. The light was blocked out by the tree. And those leaves were dangling down in front of it, so it blocked off the light to the surface of the tree. Okay. And in the background, I always like to go back and put a little more color back in the background. So I'm going to take some of this color off of the palette here and just kind of go back in and put in some color. Leave a little bit of the light greens, but it was a lot darker back here. Not dark, but a lot more shadows back here on these trees, because there was a lot of shadow. The sun was coming through, but there was a lot of shadow patterns.
We have a comment. It makes sense now.
Oh, great.
Cast shadows.
Yeah, cast shadows. Very interesting subject matter. A little bit of another little detail. Only little detail I have is right here. This tree here, I'm going to make the tree trunk a little darker. A little counter change, which is dark in front of light, light in front of dark. So I left the tree trunk in the background light against the dark. Here I'm putting the tree trunk dark against the lighter portion of the middle ground here. And I'll leave that one in the background. I'll stay in the background. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's go back to the main. Let me go back to the main program. Back to the main camera. Oh, before I do that, I'm sorry. I wanted to show you. I'm gonna put a little frame over that. Let's put a frame around it, maybe look a little different. It always looks a little better under a frame. Up here. Put a little mat around it and kind of clean it up a little bit more and straighten it up. All right, you can see the sky up there, see the red building, see the shadow pattern on the house, the shadow on the cast shadow on the ground, and the form shadows on the form trees. And the form shadow on these buildings here are very important. So today's demonstration was on form and cast shadows. And I think it turned out pretty good. I really enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed that. So let's go back to my main camera. If you enjoyed that today, let me hear some comments. Go to my website and give me a subscribe. go to my website, and you can download the photograph and the pictures and try out that exercise yourself. Show a demonstration today on how to paint that shadow across the ground that went up the side of the building across those bricks. That was probably the most interesting part of the painting that I like. But you got to do the background in order to get the rest of the painting done or started. So I'll be back again next week on Thursday at 2 o'clock. So welcome to come back and join me in then. Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And I'll be on this evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with having a drawing, Simply Fun with Simply Drawing with Everett. Simply Fun. Simply Drawing with Everett. Yeah. And I'm going to do a drawing of the frontal part of the face. The frontal part of the face, which will be very interesting. I think those that enjoy drawing will also enjoy trying to draw a face. So I think you might get something out of it. So I'll see you again next week. And until then, you all be safe and take care and try out the new painting. I'd like to have you try that. So